All right, welcome everybody to the Wealth Without Stress podcast. My name is Colt Callison, and I am here with a great friend of mine, and the guy that actually got this whole thing started, Jason Emily, my co-host.
Yeah.
So, welcome to round 2 of recording this.
Yeah.
So, just so everybody knows, we recorded a whole episode.
Yep.
Went to put it on the computer to edit it,
Yep.
and I don't know what happened with the audio, but it would not synchronize and something messed up. So we're doing this again. So if you are hearing this, I'm a much happier guy because it worked.
Yep.
So, but Wealth Without Stress. So this is our first episode, brand new podcast. This came about because, well, I've been in real estate for 13 years now. Pretty successful career at it. Never made less than 6 figures. Helped many agents here in the local Wichita area get to that as well. And it's something that I've always been good at. I've never been, the top number 1 agent in the country or anything like that, but a great career, but it's never something that I've been completely passionate about, right? I didn't really care to get into real estate sales back in 2013, but, that was just something that Ashton, my wife, told me, hey, you should do this. You'd be good at it, and I did it. Fast forward, you and I, well, you came on and did a podcast with me, about a month and a half ago, something like
about
that,
a month ago.
On another podcast I have called New Agent Jumpstart, where we talked about the infinite banking concept, retirement, and everything for real estate agents. And I got to be honest, man, that was that was the best podcast. For one, we had a lot of feedback from it. That was all positive. And we got the most views, everything like that on my very little channel, right? And I had the most fun recording it. Right? It was just something that is more aligned with my passion, talking about wealth building, passive income, all that kind of stuff, and using the infinite banking concept as a key component to that. And so that really spurred me to reach out to you. We went to lunch, start talking about, hey, what would it be like if we were to team up and start teaching people this concept and, teach people to build wealth without stress, because there's guaranteed avenues around it, right? So that's kind of how it came about and where the mindset is. So Wealth Without Stress is what we decided to use as the name of it. That name came from you, right? You have a website with your insurance business and everything, wealthwithoutstress.com. We're going to keep that and everything. We've played around with a lot of different ideas, but we kept coming back to that. So how'd you come up with that?
Well, so the thought process behind Wealth Without Stress is my goal professionally is to help people create wealth without worry. And worry is just an avenue of stress. Stress isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
It can make us be disciplined to get up out of bed at time, knowing that if we financially don't get up when we're supposed to get up, go to that job, then we're not going to be able to feed our family. That is stress that provides that. However, worry is a negative stress, and we shouldn't have worry when it comes to our financial futures. And so my goal is to educate people on finding avenues and ways to create wealth that doesn't also come with it the worry. And so that is how I came up, or why I coined that phrase, is people can take control. They can find avenues to create wealth and not have that worry that comes with a lot of the avenues that people are taught nowadays.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I come from the Dave Ramsey line of thinking. And I say that for, the philosophy around Dave Ramsey, the 7 baby steps, all that kind of stuff. I was huge into that. So I was teaching Financial Peace University. I was teaching, other agents in our office through that course and everything like that. I've gone to his live events. I've had lunch with Dave Ramsey. You know, when you say drink the Kool-Aid, I drank the Kool-Aid. And then I know you came around and you were saying, hey, Colt, you know, there's some things that you can do financially that, you know, could really change your life. And you mentioned the term whole life, and I was immediately turned off.
Yep.
I was very closed-minded, didn't want anything to do with it. And it took 2 years. And thank God that you stayed with me and were very patient with me, because it was a paradigm shift for me. And it was one that I was very ingrained in. And, you know, you just kept sending me books. Here, read this, right? It's kind of like what Dave Ramsey says, you know, when you're a spouse that, you know, gets on board, it's very hard for you to tell somebody and convince them. So might as well have a third party do it.
Yep.
And that's exactly what you did. And then the light bulb just went off. And I'm like, hey, is this the concept that you were talking about, this infinite banking thing? Is this what you've been saying this whole time? And you're like, yep. And, you know, let's get together again.
Yeah, if I remember right, it was a video, and I don't know, we can share his name, I guess, but a gentleman that's online that has done very, very well in real estate investing and things like that, and he was sharing how where he saves his money. And let's be honest, he's been more successful than me, growing multi-millions of dollars in wealth up to this point. And so it took that to just open your eyes to that concept.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah.
So what got you started with this? Where were you at when you were making that transition and everything like that?
Yeah. So, Allie and I, our background, very successful in another arena of business. We were six-figure earners, and it was a self-study, searching for myself what I thought would be an ideal wealth growth for us. And so it sounds funny, but I just Googled, what are the wealthy doing with their money? And I followed the Dave Ramsey, had IRAs, had Roth IRAs, but had to no longer contribute to those because our income grew too much. And we'll talk about some of those government plans and those type of things on this podcast, I'm sure. But our income grew too much that I couldn't contribute to a Roth anymore. And I thought that was the best way to grow wealth, tax-free. And so I just started looking and searching, found people that were sharing some concepts that were way outside of my paradigm. So I would say if nothing else, I was just a few steps ahead of you when I started sharing this process, because I had already gone through and sought out and was looking for something different.
Yeah.
And so that's how this all started. And, you know, I have friends that are successful, business owners, investors, and things like that I just thought, man, they could have value in learning these type of things too. I never heard of this thought process. Why had I never heard of this? And so I just started slowly sharing it with them. And after doing that for quite some time, enough people said, yeah, this looks like something that I should look into. And that's how it grew from that standpoint.
Yeah. I know for one thing, this whole podcast, right? If somebody is so close, I heard this comment the other day, or this quote, I couldn't tell you who did it or who said it, but it's basically, most people know enough to think they're right. And yet they don't know enough to know that they're wrong. Right. And that's where I was. I thought I knew enough. I thought I knew the way. And then the more I learned, the more I found out maybe the mainstream way of doing things isn't the right way of doing things. Maybe, just maybe, the government created a problem with the income tax, which was created in 1913 before any of us were born.
Yep.
Right. And at the same time created the Federal Reserve, which, oh, by the way, is not federal at all. There's nothing federal about it.
Yeah, don't get me started on that.
I know. And we'll talk about it, right? Because I think it's important that people know Federal Reserve, it's not backed by anything, right? It used to be backed by gold, and then Nixon took us off of the gold standard back in the 70s.
Yep.
And now it's fake. It's no more. There's no more value than the pieces of paper that you buy at Walmart, right? Yep. It's just backed by the good faith of the U.S. government. And we all know that the government's been so good in their stewardship of money,
Yeah.
we should just listen to them, right? So the government created this whole problem of, hey, we're going to start taxing the people through the 13th Amendment and federal income tax. But they found out that they were taxing too much. So then they had to create these loopholes, right?
Yeah.
That everybody thought that only the wealthy played by, and the wealthy had all these tax loopholes. Well, it's the same thing. The wealthy play by the same set of rules that anybody else can play. There's no special rules for the wealthy.
Yep.
That, it's all the IRS tax code. And so then they created these tax deferred or government funded retirement plans. And I guess not government funded, you fund it. You put up 100% of the money, take 100% of the risk.
Exactly.
And the government gets to swoop in at the back end and say, hey, now we've been partners this whole time. We want our taxes off of it. So maybe there's just a different way. And so I would say that anybody wanting to listen to this podcast, if you find it beneficial, just keep an open mind, right? Because if you hear certain terms and you're immediately turned off by it and you turn this thing off, you'll never learn.
Yep.
Or if you're not at least open to a different way of thinking, then I kind of feel sorry for you because you were like me at one point and you completely shunned away from it. And it took me, had I known what I know now, we'd be so much further along.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think for people to evaluate listening to us is look at the results that you've gotten so far with what you've been doing up to this point. And if you're happy with it, then continue to do what you're doing. But for me, there was a point where I'm like, there's not as much to show for the steps that we're taking as I thought we would be at this point, in life.
Yeah.
And this was 12 or 13 years ago when we started implementing some of these processes. However, the concept wasn't opened up to me until about 6 years ago. But we had some of these things in place. And, mid 30s at that point, there just wasn't enough to show for all the time and effort and all those type of things. So I thought, man, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, when I had that retirement type mentality, I'm going to have the exact same results. It may be 2 or 3 times as large, but the speed at which it's growing is not what I want it to be. So, we all know the definition of insanity that, if you want to change the results, you got to change what you're doing. And so I was open to that, to figure out what I needed to do to get different results up to that point.
Well, doing a little bit of research for this, speaking of results, I mean, here's the crazy thing. The traditional mainstream way of thinking is, it's the Dave Ramsey thing, 15% into a retirement account, all that kind of stuff. Let me just tell you where Americans are at that. I did a little bit of research, kind of, to wet the tongue just a little bit. So traditional retirement savings like IRAs, they're just basically, I'll just be blunt, they're failing America, right? We got enough data now. They've been around long enough that we've seen the 30-year, 40-year data, and it's just, you're going to be shocked. So according to Guardian Life reported that the average 65-year-old, right, has accumulated a median retirement savings of only $200,000. Now, let me tell you what that's going to get you, right? Looking into it a little bit more, according to Edward Jones, to live off $50,000 a year, you need close to $600,000 in your retirement fund, right? Now, here's the kicker. Of that $50,000, $39,000 of that comes from Social Security. So $11,000 comes from your retirement fund, and that needs to be close to $600,000, but yet the average or the median is $200,000. So they've only got a third of what they need to even make that. Then it gets even worse. If you need to live off $100,000 a year, which, let's be honest, in the United States, a family income needs to be, especially as we talk about inflation and everything. Man, if you're not making close to that 100,000, you're going to be falling behind, especially in the next 10, 15 years, right? To make 100,000, you need to have close to 1.1 million in retirement, which again also includes close to $40,000 in Social Security. Here's the problem I have with this, right? So you and I are getting kind of older in our age. We've established I'm older than you, right? I think I got a year on you, right?
Well, I'm 40, so
I'm 41.
Okay.
All right. So I'm
Okay.
older and wiser, everything like that. I'm thinking ahead a little bit more.
Yep.
You and I both got roughly 25 years to go until we get to the retirement age. And let's not even get on the topic of is retirement even a biblical thing, right? However, 25 years from now, and we're going back to the example where almost 40% of that income in those examples were from Social Security.
Yep.
Do you think Social Security is going to be around in 25 years for us?
I have my own opinion in that. I would say no, or it cannot continue on the same trajectory that it is right now.
And if it
To
does
sustain
continue,
itself.
yeah, and if it does continue, what's the tax implications?
Yeah.
How much are we going to be taxed to sustain that Ponzi scheme?
Yep.
Because that's what it is to me.
Yep.
It's the younger generation supporting the older generation.
Yep.
When we could have just used that money and invested and been much further off.
Going back to the government of being amazing stewards and great, financials, great financial minds,
Yeah.
which is just not true.
Yeah. So I want to get away from basically what the government says is good for me. Because, again, I think they created the problem.
Yep.
And in order to relieve some of the problems that they've created these tax-deferred plans, right? And I also want to look at, well, where's the money going, right? And who's controlling the capital?
Yep.
And why are we incentivized to send our money somewhere else where we give up control
Yep.
completely? Because here's the thing, and this is why I don't agree with the Dave Ramsey line of thinking. You want me to give up my capital, right, and put faith in somebody else that they will do better than me from a financial standpoint, give them 30, 40 years in hopes that they did it correctly,
Yep.
right? And as we just read, they're not.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not a stab at any financial planner or anything like that. It's just the system's broken.
Yep.
And we need a way to control the capital. So on this podcast, you're going to hear us talk more about infinite banking concept, whole life and everything. And this isn't anything new. These things have been around for over 150, 160 years.
Well, even 200 years.
Yeah, some of them are over 200 years old. John D. Rockefeller and their wealth, it was built on this concept, right? It was the foundation of how they were able to amass so much wealth and everything like that. Again, you also have to understand where's the money coming. Those that are teaching, did they really get wealthy off what they teach, or did they get wealthy off a different product,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So Dave Ramsey, we'll just go back to him. Dave Ramsey, do you think Dave Ramsey really got wealthy in his millions of dollars by putting 15% of his income back into mutual funds?
No.
No.
He did not. But I think there's a false thought process that if you follow that advice, that you could get to where Dave's at, and that isn't the case. We've come to find that out as well. I've heard of, and I see multiple people that every 5-10 years, they become debt-free, they follow financial peace, whatever advice that they've got out there. Inflation catches up with them, life catches up with them, and in 5 to 10 years, they're going back through the class again. Is because they can't get ahead of the wave.
Yeah.
And so that's my goal for people, if nothing else, is to try to educate them and open their mind up to, you cannot continue to the same results over and over and over again and think, man, this time it's going to work and get me ahead.
Yeah. And again, this is not a stab on Dave Ramsey, because I believe there's a time and a place for Dave Ramsey.
Yes.
And his way of teaching. I think up to a certain point, I think Dave Ramsey is really good at getting your mindset straight on bad debt, getting out of that kind of debt, getting back to an even playing field. I think he's great at that. Where him and I disagree is what's it going to be like from that point to create long-term generational wealth.
Yes.
A book that I've read by a guy named M.J. DeMarco, he wrote a book called The Millionaire Fastlane. And he calls out people like Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, about what they preach compared to what they actually do. He said, don't look at what they preach.
Yep.
Look at what they're doing with their own finances behind closed doors.
Yep.
And where Dave Ramsey became very successful is he created a great business and created a good product that really hit home in the hearts of a lot of consumers, right? But where he makes his money is selling his courses, his radio show, his endorsed local providers.
Yes.
So a lot of people, and don't get me on the topic of, oh, his endorsed local providers have the heart of a teacher and they, understand his methods and the reasoning for that. Because let me tell you something. When I got started in real estate, I worked for the guy that I worked for, my mentor at the time. He was a Dave Ramsey real estate endorsed local provider. Never read the book.
Okay.
So didn't know the baby steps. Never seen the guy in a live studio or anything like a live event. Didn't eat lunch with him, but I did. I did all 4 of those things. So on his entire team, I was the only one that read all his books, that understood the baby steps, was actively pursuing the baby steps and following the plan, went to his live events, paid extra money to be VIP seating right up front and everything. My wife and I had lunch with the guy. He's very different in person than he is online or on the radio show, and he's very introverted. Great guy. Love talking to him. But when I was working with the endorsed local provider leads, when somebody says, hey, I want to find a real estate endorsed local provider, that lead came to my team leader, right? My mentor. He didn't know how to handle them, so he gave them to me. I worked all of them. Now, at the same time, I had to give 28% of my commission to Dave Ramsey. That was his endorsed local provider fee.
Yep.
Right? Every single transaction. So in about a year span, he made about $50,000 just off my business alone because I had to give him 28%.
Yeah.
Right. So that's your endorsed local provider program. So just know how it works on the back end. You need a tax guy, endorsed local provider, they're paying.
Yep.
You need an insurance provider, they're paying.
Yep.
So that's what you need to look at, right? Where's the money coming from?
Exactly.
Exactly. So what are we going to be talking about on this program?
Well, my goal is for people to be educated to where they feel like they can make an informed decision, and giving them another voice outside of the traditional talking heads. And that's going to be 90% of the people that they're hearing in terms of marketing and all those type of things is, the accumulation method, the accumulation model, the Wall Street model, you're not smart enough to take care of your own finances, which I argue are all lies. And so through education, through repetition, through working with somebody that's willing to work with you and teach you, you are more than capable of controlling, making the financial decisions that are best for your family. Yeah. And so that's my goal personally when it comes to this podcast. And I know you're right in line with me on that, is educating people to where they can start taking control of their finances and not giving it away to somebody else.
Yep. So hopefully you stick with us and see, give us a little bit of time, right?
Yeah, for sure.
A few episodes. Our goal with this is we want to release an episode every Tuesday and every Friday, right? So 2 a week. We feel like there's a lot of stuff that we can talk about.
Yep.
You and I both said before jumping on here that we could really go hours, right?
Yep.
And everything. But, we need to break this down into chunks that people can digest and everything. So keep an open mind. Come back. Next episode, we're going to be talking about the infinite banking concept, and a gentleman named R. Nelson Nash came up with this concept and everything. So I can't wait to jump into that one. That's going to be awesome. But don't take our word for it, right?
Yep.
Read the book. We will. He wrote a book called Becoming Your Own Banker, and that's really what got me started with this whole thing. And you just seek out information, right? Yep. We're still learning. We make mistakes, right? What we thought was the right way years ago is we've learned a different way.
Yep.
Who knows? We might learn a different way here. And
always fine-tuning, always refining. And if you don't do that, you're going to become really, really stagnant. So I wouldn't want to work with somebody that isn't always trying to make things better.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, you're going to be able to find us on YouTube.
yep.
You can find us on Spotify and YouTube, both video format. So we got the cameras rolling. Apple Podcasts will be on there. That's audio only. And then wealthwithoutstress.com. So the website will eventually have all the episodes uploaded to that. So that's where you can find us. Anything else before we sign off for this first one? Hopefully the audio worked good this time.
Hopefully. I would just say, going back to that, have an open mind. I love to have conversations with people. And so please reach out, ask your questions online, if nothing else too. I mean, because you probably have a question that somebody else has and maybe they're not willing to ask it. So if nothing else, through that communication, we can have that. But I'm an open book, willing to share any negative aspects I've ever had of this way of thinking, positives. Let's just have a conversation.
Absolutely. So, well, Jason, it's been awesome. And I can't wait to continue on this. So until next time, brother.
Looking forward to it.
All right, bud. We'll see you.
Yep.